Welcome to 3 Questions with Movius. I am here with Chethan, our Chief Product Officer. Chethan, welcome.
Thank you.
So let's talk about messaging. What does security really mean when it comes to messaging?
Messaging, I would say, is the most prevalent communication channel for businesses today, especially the new demographics of workforce that's entering grew up with messaging, right? So the messaging is going. When it comes to security, there's multiple layers of security when it comes to messaging security, right? At the front end, you have how the messages are protected at the edge. Like, you're using different messaging applications. How secure is it on those applications? Can someone sniff those messages, right? That's one level. Then your messages to reach the intended party has to traverse through a web of network. How is that, in transit, how is it protected, right? That's important because that's kind of where a lot of the man-in-the-middle type of attacks happen. And then ultimately, the message gets delivered, but there's always stored somewhere on a server. How is it protected there, right? That's important. And even if it's protected there, who has access to it? Their proper ACLs. So for me, security of a messaging ecosystem is not just one thing. It's really about the totality of the solution and how each node in that ecosystem of how message gets delivered is protected, and you're only as good as your weakest link, unfortunately. So messaging is a very critical communication means for the modern workforce, and then so ensuring it's secure and protected should be everyone's concern.
Yeah, and that leads me into my next question, which is, where do you think, from your opinion, where do most messaging apps fail?
There's a lot of emphasis because there's so much attention to the security at the edge. A lot of messaging apps try to spend a lot of time or talk about how they protect messages at the edge. What they fail to do is to really pay equal attention to behind the scenes, so where people may not be paying attention. If you look at any of the most recent vulnerabilities or breaches, it's not necessarily been at the edge. It's really happened on the server. So at Movius, we take that very seriously. So our platform is built from the ground up to be secure, and it's always good to be paranoid about security, and that's how we look at it. And so you don't really take it for granted. So I think to answer your question, most messaging applications fail because they tend to pay too much attention or not pay enough attention to the rest of the ecosystem that are participating in the message delivery, right? And that's kind of where you over-index on one thing and then you end up failing on the other end.
So from your recommendation, how would a business in 2026 go about choosing kind of the right secure messaging platform?
You ask the right questions. You basically dig deeper, right? When you're evaluating a messaging application, don't just stop at, what are your authentication schemes? How does the messaging app communicate? Don't stop at that. Look at think about a journey of a message when it leaves your device and reaches your intended audience. Look at all the points where there might be a vulnerability or there might be a gap or a hole which can be attacked, which can become an attack vector. So look at messaging applications that are built for this thing. Those companies will disclose that information very openly because security is everyone's concern, right? There's nothing to hide. So you talk about how are you protecting the app authentication, how is the messages stored on the device, how is the messages transmitted in transit, how is it protected on the server, who has access to it, how long do you keep the data, and what happens on the other end when it's delivered, right? So you ask all of those questions, and well-prepared companies will happily disclose that. That's why we actually write several white papers, and we disclose it very proudly to when our customers ask those questions, and we actually like when customers ask us tough questions. So yeah, that's what you should look at. You look at all of the details, not just stay at the surface in terms of, yeah.
Awesome. Great answer.
Totally.
Great to have you on. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you.